Hey guys, so welcome to an episode on Grow channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe it. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the electronic vehicle segment, the EV segment, right? And we all know that it has been trending in the news for quite a bit due to Tesla, but we also should know what is happening in the Indian EV market as well. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the EV sector, the challenges faced by the EV sector, the different type of technologies in the EV sector in Indian market. Okay, we're also going to find out the key demand drivers that will boost the EV segment in India. And finally, towards the end of the video, we will talk about the important stocks or the important stock listed players in this EV segment. So stay tuned till the end because that's when I show you all the different players in the market who are stock listed, and then we can do our own analysis on that. Okay, so let's move on to the first segment, which is the whole brief of the EV segment in India. Let's understand the electronic vehicle segment in India, right? But first, let's understand how big this industry is in India. So currently, the electronic vehicle industry is at a very nascent stage in India. It is less than 1% of the total vehicle sales, okay, in India, the electronic vehicle segment. But however, people are estimating that it has a potential to grow to up to 5% in the next few years. Now, at present, there are only around 5 lakh two-wheelers and even less cars, electric vehicle cars and two-wheelers in the market right now. If the demand consolidation happens and if the battery exchange happens really well, people are predicting that if this happens in India, the electronic vehicle sales will be more than 1.6 million vehicles by FY23. By 2023, we should have more than 1.6 million vehicles selling in India. And that is why people are pegging this industry as one of the fastest growing industry if everything works out in a beautiful way. And we will look at all the features. We will look at everything that happens in this industry. Now, let's look at our Indian auto industry, right? The Indian auto industry currently is the fourth largest industry in the world, and it is expected to become the third largest industry by 2021-22. Okay, the industry accounts for 7.1% of India's GDP. Now that's a lot. Okay, 7.1% of India's GDP is a lot for an industry. It is also estimated that in 2026, the entire Indian automobile industry is going to be around 282 billion US dollars. Okay, now that's massive. And it is also going to make India one of the fastest growing automobile sector. Okay, so that is why it is very exciting for people when they talk about the electronic vehicle segment, because this is the future. A lot of people are talking about this getting implemented in the States. It will eventually come into India. So it's fun to look at it right now. It's very important to look at it right now. So we'll have to peg what happens in the future with this. Okay. Now, another important fact. According to a report of the National Mission Plan for Electronic Mobility in 2020, the Indian car market is governed by two-wheeled vehicles, which accounts for 75% of the total number of vehicles sold in India. So India predominantly runs on two-wheeler market than a four-wheel market, right? The passenger car segment is dominated by small car segment and not the big car segment. Now, this is a very interesting factor, right? Small car segments in India work well compared to big car segments. So a lot of people who kept saying, right, the Tesla will come into India and it will disrupt the electronic vehicle market. Tesla is a luxury car vehicle. Okay, so even if it comes into India, it has to go slightly lower in the bracket, like make small car segments to actually fit into the Indian market. Now, people who are poised to do well in that segment is people like Tata, who come with an affordable electric car for people. So Tata will win the affordable sector maybe, and Tesla might win the luxury car segment. So this is why it is very important for us to understand how the entire market in India is pegged, how two-wheelers are so important, and we do have a few startups in India which are doing two-wheeler electronic vehicles as well. So two-wheeler market is big in India. Small car segment for the electric space is also very important. And then we will finally go to the big space, right? The luxury market. So this is a few things that I want to tell you guys before we move into the next segment, which are challenges of EV in India. Okay guys, so in this segment, we're going to talk about the different challenges faced by the electronic vehicle segment in India. And there are a lot of challenges, right? Some of them we already know, some of them we might not know. So let's take a look at the first problem that India might face with the electronic vehicle segment. Now, the first problem is that charging facilities in India are virtually non-existent. Now, think about this. For an electric vehicle to run, we need charging stations everywhere, right? So just let me give you an example. If we have an electric car and we're driving it from Mumbai to Ahmedabad, on the way, we need multiple charging stations so that if there's any problem, we can go charge. Okay, it's not a petrol pump that you can just go and fill petrol and continue. We need to go to a charging station, put our car for charge and wait for a bit. Now, in India, there are a lot of places, especially in remote villages, where the charging stations will not be approved or will not even be there because the power facility is not there. There's no electricity in these places. So when there's no electricity in these places, how will you set up a massive charging station? And if there are 10 electric cars coming, you need a proper facility where you have 15, 20 charging stations. So one of the big factors here is that charging facilities in India have still not been implemented, has never been done before. Although charging station installations have recently started by entities such as Tata Power and NTPC. So Tata Power and NTPC have realized that, you know what, electric vehicle is going to become the future. Let's start building this infrastructure. Let's go start tying up with all of these people to set up these charging facilities. Also, let's start delivering good kind of power to all these places. So anytime we have these national highways, you will eventually in the future start seeing a lot of charging stations on the way. So Tata Power and NTPC are doing that. Now, the second biggest factor here is the high upfront cost. Okay, the largest driver for this high upfront cost and hence the total cost of ownership is the cost of battery. Now, in an electronic vehicle, okay, in an electric vehicle, right, when you buy it, the most important and the major component is the battery. Okay, the battery is what differentiates Tesla or Tata or anyone else from each other. It is the main battery part. Now, the battery itself is the most expensive one. So if you have to make a small car or a small car segment kind of affordable electric car, then the battery will start behaving in a different way. You might need a smaller type of battery which is not as efficient as the bigger batteries, right? So maybe I can't do long drives with these, whereas in petrol you can just go keep filling. So the battery, because it's so expensive right now, the cost of the final vehicle product is also very expensive, which I believe in the future, once this market becomes very big and price starts consolidating and the demand supply gap starts bridging, the price of these batteries will start going down. Thus the price of your electronic vehicles will also start going down. So that is also a very good thing. Okay, another thing, local component manufacturers are very few in number and heavily dependent on Chinese imports. Now, this is why the Make in India push is being so hard, because we want local manufacturers, people to produce the batteries here, people to make the components here, even the smaller components. I'm not talking about the batteries. There are so many nuts, bolts, screws, so many different auto parts that are required for an electric vehicle that is currently being imported from China, or they are giving it at a very cheap rate for mass manufacturing. But we need to get it back in India and actually do this in India. And when that happens, you will see manufacturing also growing really well for India as well. Okay, so that is another factor, that a lot of local component manufacturers are very few in number. They don't have that capability and scale to reach the EV segment, and that is why all the current electric vehicle manufacturers are importing stuff from China, which is again not good. Okay, so this was the challenges that are faced by India till now. Next, let's look at what are the different technologies that are involved in making an electronic vehicle. Okay, that we'll see that in the next segment. Now, what do you think is the biggest technology involved, right? We just spoke about it in the previous segment where we spoke about challenges. The biggest thing here is the battery. Okay, the most innovative thing that you can do with an electronic vehicle is the battery. Now see, Tesla is doing 100 other things with automatic driving and stuff like that, but let's not go to that. Let's just come to the core infrastructure of an electric vehicle, which is the battery itself. Now, the battery is more of like a lithium battery. It's a lithium ion battery. Okay, over the past 15 years, lithium ion has grown dramatically and has become widely used for many portable electronic products. But now, the lithium ion battery is also one of the most important components in the battery making process for an electronic vehicle as well. Now, these batteries have been tested on the road and all over the world, and they believe that lithium ion batteries are suitable for this. Now, the demand for lithium ion batteries have suddenly gone up. If the demand for batteries have gone up, then the price of these batteries might go up, or we need more supply. Okay, so we need a lot of people coming and setting up plants to set up these lithium ion batteries, or many startups to come and do these battery setups so that they can increase the supply so that the price does not go too high. But the major component here in the technology is the lithium ion battery, and that is super important. And we should keep an eye out on the price that is fluctuating with the lithium ion battery and have a look at what are the components or what are the key players in our Indian market who are producing lithium ion battery. Because think about it, right? If this is the core technology that people are going to use in the future, okay, and some Indian player is working on lithium ion battery, and there are, by the way, I will show that to you in the later half of the segment, but there are a few players working on the lithium ion battery. Wouldn't they be more poised to win in the future? Like the probability of them winning might be higher? Yes, so let's look at that. Okay, in the next segment, let's look at the possible demand drivers for electronic vehicles in India. Now, what is a demand driver? Demand driver means agar ye hua, if this happens or if that happens, electronic vehicle in this market will boom, it will become amazing and it will grow really fast. So we want to see what is that thing that comes from which sector, who will drive this demand in India for electronic vehicles for it to grow. If you're only thinking that, me buying an electric car will be the demand driver, no, that's not the case. There are so many possible outcomes that can happen with an electronic vehicle, and let's look at one. One of the most interesting things, one of the most interesting things that you can see from a demand driver perspective is it comes with public procurement. Now I'll tell you what public procurement means. This is one of the biggest demand drivers, One is the public transport. Now you've seen these buses that we have, a lot of these, local buses, slightly higher end AC buses and stuff like that. A lot of buses in Pune are now electric buses. If you have noticed or not, I don't know, but a lot of buses in Pune are electric buses. Some buses in the airport are also electric buses. They're not running on any kind of fuel. So if all of these buses start becoming electric buses, obviously it's good for the environment, and also it's a massive value add for the government because they start saving up on a lot of costs like fuel and maintenance and stuff like that. So one of the demand driver is the public procuring these things, like for example government offices procuring electric vehicles for small tasks. Like imagine a lal batti with an electric vehicle. That would be cool, right? Now that is one of the demand driver. Another demand driver is by our startup ecosystem itself. Now imagine your Zomato guy or your Swiggy guy or say your Ola guy, or your Uber driver is coming in an electric vehicle. Would that be a demand driver for buying electric vehicles? Obviously, because think about it, from an Ola and Uber's perspective, I don't have to fill fuel. You can give more money back to the driver or you can keep more money in your pocket. But either which way, it improves efficiency and it improves your margins as well. Even for an Ola guy, even for a Swiggy or a Zomato guy who has to come in that scooter and deliver, he has to keep putting fuel. Now there's no fuel, it's just a charging station. So Swiggy and Zomato can actually have charging facilities where all their drivers go and charge for free and then actually go and start delivering food, which again increases their margin, increases efficiency. So this is one of the biggest, I think, demand drivers that can happen if a lot of people start using this for daily purposes. Now, another big demand driver is the adoption of private four-wheel vehicles and two-wheel vehicles. Now, a lot of Indian families can start buying electric vehicles because see, eventually we will come to know, and if you look at our petrol and diesel prices, which are almost at 100 rupees, we all understand the common man problem is very serious, right? We all know that it is getting quite expensive for this fuel to actually put petrol and diesel into our cars and travel. It is very expensive. Now, a lot of people are doing carpooling, which is great, but now COVID happened, so you can't do carpooling so easily. So a lot of factors. So now, wouldn't it be more smart to say buy an electric car, or maybe little more smart to buy an electric two-wheeler rather than buying a diesel or a petrol car? The reason why a lot of people are not buying this or not open to this is because the charging facilities are not there in India yet. But imagine a situation where every petrol pump will have a charging facility. Think about that. Wouldn't it be more better to buy an electric car rather than a petrol car? Just saying, you guys make your decision. Another thing, there are some government initiatives like BS5 norms from April 21st, which will help these norms to make internal combustion engines cars more expensive. So there's a lot of government initiatives that are coming, a lot of strict rules that are coming. And even if you look at the other rules where, they said that after 15 years, if a car is older than 15 years, they have to do a health checkup and then a fitness test to even see if they can actually go and drive the car and stuff like that. So a lot of these extra maintenance issues are coming into the picture. So if the government initiatives make it more strict to run these cars and vehicles in the market, then everyone would eventually adopt into an electric vehicle, which is again good for the electric vehicle segment. The government center, right? The center will start investing in different charging stations with active participation from private and public sector units. Now, if this happens, this would be a massive demand driver. If the government comes and says, guys, we need an infrastructure plan. Now, they make this NHAI plan, they make this national highway plan, a big national highway, a big tunnel and stuff like that. Imagine a beautiful charging station plan. If you do a charging station plan, start off with a small thing like Mumbai to Ahmedabad. Something that people frequently travel with. And put all charging stations over there across and give it an experiment with electric cars. See how that would work. So I think the center has to invest, and I think they are investing in a lot of infrastructure facilities for setting up charging stations all across this. Also, I know this for a fact, there has been, the center has actually made a budget of 10,000 crores that has been made for setting up charging stations for their electric vehicles in India and also for their own electric buses in India. So these electric buses that they currently have, these electric vehicles that the government has, they're setting up charging stations to set up for them so that they can start doing public transport more efficiently and easily. So these are these are some of the key demand drivers. Another key demand driver would be that, see, if all this happens, right, what people are predicting, like, look boss, if all of this happens, then the electric vehicle market in India could not be millions, but it could be a multi-billion dollar market in India. If the charging stations are set up, the infrastructure is awesome, and I can actually travel between one city to another without thinking about filling fuel, then this will be a multi-million dollar industry. Okay, so this is why it is very exciting in India to find out what's happening. And the most important segment that we're going to talk about right now next, these are the demand drivers. But now let's start looking at what are the different type of stock listed companies in this segment. Okay, who's doing what and who's going to benefit how. Okay, so the next segment is EV stocks. We have actually split it into 5 segments. Okay, so it's going to be very easy for you guys to understand. Okay, see you guys in the next segment. So finally, we're at the segment where we talk about the different kind of stocks in the market. And now this is very important for us to do our analysis on what are the different type of stocks that are there in the EV segment, how can they benefit, and what are they actually doing in the market right now. Now, the Grow team has been amazing with coming up with this amazing research, this beautiful research that they've done, and we're going to talk about them. Okay. Now, the Grow team has actually categorized a different portfolio for each of these things. So, for example, we have 5 different type of EV players in the market. One, the 4-wheeler and 2-wheeler stocks. Okay. Second, the battery manufacturing stocks. Third, the electric vehicle charging station stocks. Fourth, the auto part component stocks. And finally, fifth, the EV software part. So the Grow team has actually categorized them into these 5 segments, and the research that they have done is beautiful, and we will look at it right now. Now the first thing, 4-wheeler and 2-wheeler stocks. So in the 4-wheeler, 2-wheeler segment, we have 4 big companies that we will talk about and 2 new entrants in this space that we will talk about. The 4 big companies are Tata Motors, Mahindra and Mahindra, Maruti Suzuki, and Hero MotoCorp. So we will talk about them and we will see what they're doing only with respect to the EV segment. Okay. First, Tata Motors. So we all know Tata Motors has been quite vocal in the EV space in the last few months, right? Tata Motors has recently, if you look at the news, has recently hived off its passenger vehicle business into a separate entity. Okay, when it comes to electronic vehicles, Tata Motors is focused on passenger vehicles and it is focused on electric buses in India. When it comes to 4-wheelers, Tata Motors already has 3 vehicles to choose from, right? They already have 3 electric vehicles, which is the Tigor EV, which is the Tata Nano EV, and they also have Tiago electric variant as well. Okay. Now in the electric bus segment, they supply these buses to the state governments and the union governments. So that is damn good for them. Currently, they're estimating the demand for these electric buses to go to 4 lakh buses in the long run. And obviously they're poised to do really well there because the government is moving into an eco-friendly electric vehicle segment. Tata recently also launched, okay, the Nexon EV. And you might have seen all these ads on TV which talks about the Nexon EV. This car is priced in the mid segment, is not in the small car segment. It's priced at around 15 to 17 lakhs, but it is also one of the most affordable cars in the market. And Tata, as we know, we always trust Tata, and once the infrastructure is set up for these charging vehicles, you will see that all the players in India, all the automobile players in India will start making more cars in the electric vehicle segment in the affordable area as well. Okay, so Tata Motors apparently in the EV sales, if you only look at the number of electronic vehicles that they've sold this year, they have sold 300 cars in the first quarter, 500 cars in the second quarter, 800 cars in the third quarter, and this is damn good math, huh? And the fourth quarter they're expected to sell around 1400 cars, and that's a lot of cars. That means demand, as you can see, is slowly increasing for the electric vehicle segment. Now, just to look at some basic financial ratios that you want to check, I'm going to put it up here. So if you look at Tata Motors right now, it's currently trading at around 315-ish. The market cap is more than 1 lakh crore, which is great. If you look at the 1-year return, it is around 253%. Tata Motors was doing really bad at the start of the year. After that, I think Rakesh Jhunjhunwala also invested in it in October, and then it just kept going up because the new management has come and done a lot of changes in that. Their debt to equity ratio is slightly high at 2.28, but the operating profit margin, which is nice, which is currently at 8.76. Their ROE percentage also is at -16, which is not that great, but I would discount this for future growth, right? So let's look at it. Let's look at it from that perspective. The second stock that I would like to cover is Mahindra and Mahindra. Now, I don't know whether you guys remember this, but Mahindra is one of the pioneers in the electric vehicle space. They were actually the first vehicle manufacturer to release an electric vehicle back in 2001 when people didn't know what electric vehicles were. And do you remember which car that was? You might have seen it on the roads, right? It was called Mahindra Reva. Reba was the first electric car that was launched in 2001, like a visionary perspective, right? From their side. It was the first electric car in India. And over the years, they've not just been sitting and relaxing, they've actually built a lot of R&D centers, especially in Bangalore, to make more electric vehicle cars in India. They actually have 5 electric cars already in production, and the popular one that is there, which is called the e-Verito, where a lot of cab aggregators use this. Okay, so e-Verito is a car that they use a lot. The company also launched his e-KUV 100. Okay, that was another car that they launched, which was again in the mid-market segment of around 8.25 lakhs. They launched this, I think, in the Autocar Expo or something like that. They launched it at that point. Okay, Mahindra & Mahindra is currently also in talks with 6 global vehicle players and manufacturers to supply components to different kind of manufacturing players so that they can start making an EV components business as well. So they're not only looking at both building the car, they're also talking to a lot of suppliers in the global space, to supply EV components to both manufacturers in the domestic space and manufacturers in the foreign space. So they're very smart that way. The company has sold totally 14,500 EV vehicles so far across 3-wheelers and cars in FY 2020, making 10% of M&M's total car sales only EV. So I think Mahindra & Mahindra is quite serious about their EV car sales. Again, let's look at their financials as well. Now their financials, if you look at it, the market cap is again around 1 lakh crores. So it is a large cap company, which is very good. The price to earning ratio is around 52, which might be slightly higher, but we'll have to check what the industry PE is as well. Their 1-year return is 99%, great. The debt to equity ratio, if you look at it, is slightly lower than what debt to equity ratio of Tata Motors has. So Tata Motors, that means, has higher debt. Okay. The operating profit margin 13.38%, better than Tata again. And if you look at their ROE, it is positive 0.71, again better than Tata as well. So if you had to choose between these two, and you have to look at the long-term perspective, do not choose from what is there today, choose from what it can be in the future. Okay, and these are 2 good stocks, 2 good companies that are there. Again, this is for educational purpose. This is not a recommendation to buy and sell. I hope you're learning a lot from this. Okay, now the third biggest player in this market, Maruti Suzuki, our very own Maruti, right? Very old player in India. Maruti Suzuki is currently the largest car manufacturer in India, and we know it. It has been there from so many years. By the way, the company has not launched even one EV vehicle of its own. Not even one. It's not even there yet. Okay, but apparently the company is going to launch its first electric vehicle called Maruti Suzuki Wagon R. Okay, which is like the family name for everyone. Like everyone loves Maruti Suzuki Wagon R. The electric component of that is coming in the second half of 2021. That is when they're planning to launch, and they're also going to start doing a lot of infrastructural changes where they're going to start setting up charging stations in the second half of 2021. So let's see how that works. Let's look at their financial ratios also. Their current market cap is double of what M&M is. It is currently at 2 lakh because obviously they're the largest manufacturers. Their PE is also currently 47, which is good. Their ROE, which is 6.76, very nice. Operating margin 7.48, very nice. Debt to equity ratio almost negligible. That means they're operating at a very beautiful place where they have a lot of cash flow ready. And their 1-year return is 21.54%, which is not bad at all. 21% in a year is beautiful, not a bad sign at all. So this is also a very safe stock, Maruti Suzuki, compared to Mahindra and Tata. But again, discount it, find out what is good for the future, not for the present. Okay. Now the fourth biggest stock that we will see that is in this space is Hero MotoCorp again. But the Hero MotoCorp, that is in the 2-wheeler segment, not in the 4-wheeler segment. Okay. Now Hero MotoCorp is the world's largest manufacturer of 2-wheeler segment. Okay. It has 34% stake in the company called Ather Energy. Have you heard of it? It's based out of Bangalore. Ather Energy is a 2-wheeler company. Very clean, very beautiful looking bikes that they have, 2-wheeler scooties that they have as well. And they have 34.58% stake in that. It looks really good, and I've seen it in Bangalore all around the roads, right? Now, Hero MotoCorp backed Ather Energy's new power plant is in Hosur, Tamil Nadu, and has already started production with an investment of more than 630 crores. The plant spreads over 4 lakh square feet, and this is something that Hero MotoCorp is betting on because no other player in the 2-wheeler segment can come and compete with them. They're the biggest, right? So they're going to come in that segment. Now let's look at their financial ratios as well. The market cap 66,000, so that means there's a lot of place to grow. Maruti Suzuki is at 2 lakh, other players are at 1 lakh, so there's slightly a room for Hero MotoCorp to grow. Price to earnings ratio 25.34, slightly lower than the other peers. ROE 22%, which is amazing, which is beautiful. Operating profit margin is again at 12.05, which is again great. 1-year return is 77.85, which is also very good. Okay, so This is very nice. I mean, I like this. And debt to equity ratio also 0.04. So this also looks like a poised winner for what the electric mobility can be in the two-wheeler segment. Okay. Then let's look at two new entrants that have come into the space. Okay, these are not very well known names, but we can have a look at it as well, because I told you Grow team has done a lot of research on this. So let's look at them as well. One is called Greaves Cotton. Now, Greaves is the largest diversified engineering companies with a presence in automotive, non-automotive, retail, etc., electric mobility and finance. They're just there little everywhere. But the main thing what is to observe is that the company has recently acquired Coimbatore-based company called Ampere Vehicles. Okay, now Ampere Electric Vehicles by Greaves is India's leading electric mobility brand that specializes in delivering affordable mobility solutions for the last mile. So they've actually acquired a company from Chennai called Ampere Vehicles, and they're coming into the electric segment to start delivering all this, right? Now the company also acquired another company called Bestway Agencies, a Haryana-based company that again develops and manufactures electric vehicles. So instead of actually manufacturing by themselves, they've gone and bought these companies and they're coming into the electric space. Now look at Greaves Cotton. The market cap is only 3,327, so it's in the mid cap space. Okay, their ROE is at 13.94%, which is again good. The operating profit margin is at 4.52, which is great. Debt to equity ratio not there again. I love such companies where the debt is slightly lower. And if you look at the 1 year return, it has given a good return of 34.99%. So this was a new entrant that has come into the space. Another new entrant has come into the space, and this I think a lot of guys know about this stock, right? Who have been in the stock market for a very long time. You would have come across this, and this is called Himadri Specialty Chemicals. Actually, primarily is involved in the manufacturing of carbon materials and chemicals. It's actually a chemical manufacturing stock. But recently what they've done, they've just acquired they formed a new company called Motovolt Mobility Private Limited, and they've invested around 100 crores into this to manufacture battery powered e-cycles. Not scooters, not cars, they're actually manufacturing cycles. So they're coming out with different kind of variations, and they're trying to tap into the electric cycle segment, which is again something that no one thought of, right? It is very, very smart to think about something like this. Now let's look at their financial ratios as well. Market cap 1907, again almost in the small cap space. P ratio of 19.99. I don't know what to compare them with, because now if they're in the chemical space, you have to compare there. But if they're coming out with e-cycles, it goes into another space. So we might have to see what happens here. The ROE is at 12.2%, which is not bad. Operating profit margin is very good at 8.14. Again, almost negligible debt to equity ratio, and 1 year return of 15.17%. Not bad. But again, this will be very interesting to find out what these guys are going to do in the future. Okay. Now, this was the first segment where we spoke about two-wheeler and four-wheeler market. Next, we will talk about the different kind of battery stocks. And this is very important because the key technology here is battery, and I want to see who in India is ready for the battery game. And if someone wins the battery game, then it's just too much sales that is coming in the future, right? So the next segment, we'll talk about the battery stocks. Hey guys, so now we will talk about the battery players, the battery stocks in the Indian market, okay? And here we have three big players that are currently in this space producing this lithium ion battery. One are Amara Raja Industries Batteries, Exide Industries and Tata Chemicals. Now let's look at the key things that they're doing in the battery space. Now if you look at Amara Raja is currently building a lithium ion assembly plant to actually tap into the EV segment. The company is in the process of building a 100 megawatt per hour assembly plant in Andhra Pradesh. It is also working very closely with IIT Chennai to make this plant a beautiful plant, right? So that they can start coming into the electric vehicle segment and start winning that market. Okay. Now, if you look at the financial ratios of Amara Raja, they're currently at a 15,000 market cap, 15,000 crore market cap. Their ROE is at 18%, not bad at all. Their operating profit margin 15.72, which is quite impressive. Debt to equity ratio again quite low, which is great. And finally, the 1 year return is at 51.99%, almost 52%, which is great. So Amara Raja is also a very good person to have a good fight in the battery segment. The second industry, or the second company that we would see in the stock market is the Exide Industries. Now, Exide batteries we've all heard of, right? Now, Exide has recently formed a joint venture, 75%, 25% joint venture with a Switzerland-based company, okay, which is also one of the world's largest energy storage solution companies. And they did this in 2019 June. Now, the JV between these two companies. The company is actually producing a production plant in Gujarat, okay, to make lithium ion batteries and also provide efficient storage facility systems for energy storage. Okay, now this is what is going to help them. This joint venture is actually going to help them fight the EV market in India by building very good lithium ion batteries. Let's look at the financials of Exide as well. Okay, the market cap is around 17,000 crores. Okay, very similar to the one that we just checked, Amara Raja. The ROE is around 12.52%. Operating profit margin 9.79%, which is good. Again, low debt to equity ratio of 0.07, and 1 year return they have is around 35.43%, which is good. Now, the third player is called Tata Chemicals, and we've all heard of Tata Chemicals. It's been there in the past, and we've been hearing this also in the stock market. It's been quite buzzing. Now, the reason why it's buzzing is Tata Chemicals, which was in the chemical space before, it was actually it is one of the largest producers of soda ash. Okay, but Tata Chemicals has just said that they want to come into the EV ecosystem. What they're doing now is they're building an energy storage system facility for mobility and stationary charging facilities. Okay, now what they're doing is they've set up labs in Chennai and Pune so that they can start developing these energy storage systems and start setting up these stationary charging systems, which is basically your EV charging stations. So Tata Chemical is coming in that. They've also started work in the lithium ion cell manufacturing as well. So this is something that you need to keep an eye out for, Tata Chemicals. And also because it's Tata, they also have a lot of other Tata companies that might need their services. So it can be a win-win effect across. So just have a look at Tata Chemicals as well. Again, the market cap is quite low. It's at 19,000, almost 20,000 crores market cap. I mean, it's in the mid-market segment. Their ROE is at 7.39, could be better. Their operating profit margin is 16.27, which is good, very good. Debt to equity ratio 0.51, quite low. And the 1 year return is 184%. Wow, that's quite a bit, right? So these were the stocks that we could see in the battery segment. Mainly the three stocks were again Amara Raja Industries, Exide Industries, Amara Raja Battery, Exide Industry, and Tata Chemicals. So have an eye on these three stocks and we will start looking at them as well. Okay. Now, in the next segment, we will look at all the different kind of charging infrastructure stocks. Guys, so in this segment, we will talk about all the companies that are there in the charging infrastructure space. Now, the people here are Tata Power, again Tata, by the way, Tata Power, Power Grid, Indian Oil, and NTPC. Now, what are these guys doing? Let's look at them, right? By the way, Tata Power, let's look at them first, has already installed around 170 EV charging points across India. Tata Power has already deployed EV charging stations in 20 cities, including our metros, which is Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Chennai, Kolkata, and also some other cities like Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, Lucknow, and Visakhapatnam. So they've already started this process, Tata Power. Tata Power also has MOUs. MOUs basically called Memorandum of Understanding. They have MOUs with IOCL, HPCL, IGL, and Government of Maharashtra for developing EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure. Okay. Now, Tata Power has also partnered with Tata Motors, obviously, MG Motors, and Jaguar Land Rover, which are all the companies of Tata itself, for developing EV charging stations. Okay, and this is going to be really cool for that as well. Now, if you look at Tata Power as a company, look at their financials. Let's look at that. The market cap is currently at 36,000 crores, which is good. ROE is 1.47, which is slightly lower because in the power segment, it's difficult to get a good ROE. Their operating profit margin is at 22%, which is great. The debt to equity ratio is slightly high, which is at 2. The reason being, this is an infrastructure heavy company. You need to set up these plants first. You need to set up all the power infrastructure first. But the 1 year return is 168%. Damn good. Awesome. Okay. The next company that we will look at is called Power Grid. Now, Power Grid is also in the EV segment. Power Grid apparently is also one of the largest transmission utility in the world, and it's playing a key strategic role in the development in the Indian power sector. Okay, their aim is to start setting up 26 charging stations in 3 cities, mainly the metro cities like Hyderabad. Okay, Mumbai, Hyderabad is where they're trying to set up this. Power Grid with Hyderabad Metro Rail and L&T Metro has installed 4 electric vehicle charging stations in Hyderabad already. So they're also setting and gearing up for entering the electric vehicle space. Now, if you look at their financials, let's look at that as well. Market cap 1 lakh crore, great large cap company. ROE is at 17.25. That is a very good ROE number to have. Operating profit margin 87%. Debt to equity ratio, obviously power stock slightly high 2, which is the same as Tata Power, and 1 year return of 31%. Not bad. Let's keep an eye on Power Grid as well. Third one is called Indian Oil Corporation. Now, Indian Oil Corporation is not in the power grid kind of segment where we saw Tata Power and Power Grid. Indian Oil is slightly in the other segment. But what Indian Oil is doing, because they have so many petrol pumps, they're like, why not get into this space as well? So Indian Oil has so many petrol pumps. The company is saying that we will offer EV charging points at all its petrol pumps and battery swapping points at all its fuel stations, and they will obviously start making money from that. It's like additional revenue. Apart from the petrol, you have EV charging stations. Give me rent for that. Okay, something like that they plan to do. Okay, they're also finalizing a plan for setting up a gigawatt scale EV battery manufacturing plant jointly with some Israeli company, and we will have to keep an eye out on this. But that is very smart by Indian Oil Corporation, because you know what, they want to facilitate charging stations. They have the real estate, they have the petrol pumps, so might as well put all of them here, all the charging stations here. So let's look at their financials as well. Market cap 95,000 crores. If they look at that ROE 4.16, could be better, not that great. Debt to equity ratio 0.94, 1 year return 9.81. So from a stock perspective, could be better, but from the future idea perspective, using their own petrol pump real estate, smart. Okay, let's look at the last company here, which is called NTPC. Now NTPC again is in the is in the sale of power, but NTPC through its subsidiary NVVN, okay, which is called Vidyut Vyapar Nigam Limited, okay, has deployed 14 electric vehicles in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. Okay, they will also set up a charging infrastructure in that territory. Okay, and they're also trying to figure out a complete range of zero emission mobility solutions. So they are also coming out in this space. But what's more interesting than the Andaman Nicobar thing is, recently AAI, which is Airport Authority of India, have signed an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, with NVVN to set up EV charging stations at the airport as well. So all the airports might have EV charging stations by NTPC. That will be a big thing where you'll get a lot of revenue driver from that sense. Now, if you look at the market, let's look at the financials of this. If you look at the market cap, it is at around 1 lakh crore, large cap company. ROE is at 8.82%, not bad. Operating profit margin 30%, very good. Debt to equity ratio slightly lower than the other two, which is 1.61%, but 1 year return is at 11.27. So let's look at how these MOUs and when they'll actually start facilitating these plants, and we will see once they start setting all this up in the future. We have to keep all of this in a tracker. Okay guys, we don't have to you don't have to, this is not a recommendation to buy or sell, but this is educational, so you need to keep all of them in your tracker. Okay, and in the next segment we will look at what are the different kind of auto parts that are required, auto parts stocks that are in the EV space, because every car needs some spare parts, right? So let's look at what are the stocks in that space. Okay, segment 4 of this part, I think it is auto parts stocks. So let's go with this as well. Okay guys, so in this segment, we will talk about the auto parts. And here we have Motherson Sumi, Minda, Sudarshan Fasteners and Endurance Technologies. So we look at what these 4 players are doing in this space and how they're getting ready for the EV fight. Okay. Now, if you look at Motherson Sumi first, Motherson Sumi, as per management, what they're saying is EVs in the future would need more wiring component, okay, which would increase the content per vehicle by close to 10 to 20%. Other businesses related to polymer and mirror based products would not be affected because of the shift to EVs. So they're banking that if EV sector does well, then you need more content in the car. So that means the wiring component that is required. So there's some Motherson Sumi will actually win that race. So they're actually happy about that, and they're ensuring that in the future they'll get a lot of revenue and margins from this as well. Now, if you look at their financials, Motherson Sumi is currently at 67,000 market cap. ROE is at 10%. Debt to equity ratio 1.29, which is good. Operating profit margin 7.11, and 1 year return is 234%. Damn, that's a lot of return. That's superb. Okay. Now, the second company that we can look at is called Minda Industries. Now, all these companies have been there in India for a very long time. Okay. Now, Minda Industries has recently acquired a company called L Labs. Okay, that underscores its focus towards R&D and electronic vehicles. In the second quarter, L Labs bagged a prestigious award from EECL to supply mobility components for EVs. So they have actually acquired a company that's getting them orders for the EV segment. So this is how they are going into that. They're also setting up an R&D facility to figure out how to tackle the EV segment. If you look at their revenues and their financials, they're currently at a market cap of 14,000 crores. Their ROE is at 9.01%. Their operating profit margin 10%, not bad. Debt to equity ratio almost negligible, 0.5, not bad at all. And the 1 year return is 65%. That's very good. That's good. Okay. Now, the third company that we will talk about is Sundaram Fasteners. Now, in the electric vehicle, the Sundaram Fasteners company, okay, this company has already been supplying spare parts, to almost all the leading companies that are there in this space. It hopes to double the current EV business of 50 crores soon to make it maybe 100, 150 crores in the future. The company also has said that they are supplying all EV parts except batteries. They are willing to make acquisitions in this space as well. Now, let's look at the financials as well. Sundaram Fasteners has a market cap of 15,000 crores. Okay, ROE 16.81, debt to equity ratio 0.34, operating profit margin 17%, very good. 1 year return 105%. A lot of people are saying that you can't make a lot of money in the stock market. The returns that these stocks are giving is great, but we don't have to see the current returns. We have to think what will happen in the future. Okay, so this is only from that educational standpoint. Ki aage kya hoga? Let's see how to connect the dots. The last company in this space we will talk about is Endurance Technologies. Okay, now Endurance Technologies has constantly been engaging with its customers for EV platforms. Okay, in Europe they also have something known as PPE. Okay, not the PPE kit, but they have something called PPE, which is called Premium Project Electric, where they have acquired some businesses for EV platforms. In India, they have also engaged with customers to do different things to acquire EV related businesses. Now, if you look at their market cap, if you look at their financials, they're currently at 19,000 market cap, 19,000 crore market cap. Their ROE is very good at 19.85. Okay, their OPM, which is operating profit margin, is at 15.74, and their 1 year return is 74%. Not bad at all. Now, very similar to this, if you look at the EV software space, okay, I'm going to merge it into this as well. If you look at EV software, we have another important company called Tata Elxsi. Again, Tata. So I don't know how, but Tatas are everywhere, right? So if you look at the Tata space, okay, Tata has already started developing cloud-based IoT platform, okay, which will provide every automaker with a common stack, okay, that will help with electric vehicles and commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles as well. So they're actually building beautiful software that can be a global connected car with IoT, so that they can actually get ready for this EV segment. And they also are manufacturers of the EV space. So let's see how that plays out. If you look at Tata Elxsi, they have a market cap of almost 17,000 crores. Okay, their ROE is 25%, operating profit 26%, debt to equity 0.05 negligible, but their 1 year return is 222%. So this was the detailed report that I told you, right? Grow team worked really hard on making this report so you can actually see it. So this was the detailed analysis of all the stocks that are currently there in the EV space. Okay, now again, all this is for you to understand how to connect the dots in the future. This is like all for educational purpose. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add something else in the next segment, which is called In the News. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about 2 interesting articles or 3 interesting articles that are currently happening in the EV space before we finish this video. I know it's slightly long, but the amount of knowledge that you're earning in this video is amazing. Okay, so stay tuned. The next segment is called In the News. This segment is called In the News. Why? Because after giving you all this industry gyan, I also want to tell you what's happening in the current market right now. Okay, so first from a superficial level, let's look at this. The number of electric vehicles sold in India has more than doubled in 3 years. So that means the demand has slowly started coming up. And we have seen that a lot of people have actually started buying electric vehicles. In 2019-2020 budget, Nirmala ma'am also announced a provision for additional income tax deduction of 1.5 lakhs on the interest taken on the loans that you have taken to buy an electric car. So they're actually pushing a lot of things in that space. Another interesting article that I recently read was Ola electric vehicles. So I don't know whether you guys know that Ola is also building a separate Ola electric vehicle plant. Okay. Now, what they're saying is Bhavesh Agarwal, who is the founder of Ola, is saying that the first Ola electric vehicle will be launched in June once the factory is ready. So they're also gearing up for this, and the factory will actually have a capacity to manufacture 10 million two-wheeler vehicles, EV vehicles at one point. Okay, so that's awesome that Ola is also coming and playing. Now, Ola is not a stock listed company, but see how everyone's jumping onto the EV game. Now, if you think Ola was one person who's coming into the game, there's another guy who's coming into the game, and we all know him. He's very famous. He's called Mukesh Ambani. Okay, so Mukesh Ambani recently came out on Feb 23rd and came out with an article, and he said that I am going to come and start making batteries for the electric vehicle companies. He said, I'm not going to make electric vehicles. Okay, I'm not going to get into that game, but I will start making batteries for all the players. Now that is so smart, because think about it. They have a petrochemical factory. They have all the infrastructure required to make beautiful batteries. So they said, we're going to get into the battery game and start delivering batteries to all the EV players. So whoever comes, we don't care. We will just supply battery. That means they're going to fight directly with your Exide Industries and Amara Raja batteries. So it is going to be a beautiful thing. We need to watch this and we need to figure out what it is, right? So this was the Indian news segment, and that's it. So guys, this was the entire video that we did with Grow. This was the entire video Grow came out with for the electric vehicle segment. It was massively value packed, because we first, remember, we spoke about the entire industry, the challenges, the demand drivers, the technologies, and then we went deep into 5 different type of categories of stocks that are there in the electric vehicle segment. We saw something with what is there in the news as well to figure out what is there in the current market. Now, all of this has been done by the Grow team. So, and trust me, they've done a lot of effort to do all this research. So for that, I want you to like and subscribe to their channel and share this video if you think there's a lot of gyan and knowledge into this. But for their effort, I want you to like and share their channel, okay? And subscribe their channel. So that was damn good. Again, this was only for educational purpose, and I hope after watching this video, you guys got a massive bunch of information from this now, and you know now exactly what is electronic vehicle segment in India and how the future of electronic vehicle segment in India is actually ready, right? So I hope you liked it, and we will come out with more episodes like this. We will come out with more videos like this. All the stocks that are shown in this video are just for educational purposes. We do not recommend a buy or a sell on any of these stocks. So this whole video is only for your education so that you can understand the stock market really well. Okay, thank you.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing. Please read the risk disclosure documents carefully before investing in equity shares, derivatives, mutual fund, and or other instruments traded on the stock exchanges.